I'm Seth Abramson. I'm an assistant professor of communication, arts, and sciences at the University of New Hampshire. I've been in this job for about 2 years. Prior to that, I studied at the Iowa Writers Workshop and the University of Wisconsin in Madison. And prior to that, I was a practicing public defender for a number of years. Well, I wouldn't say that I grew up in a particularly political family where I was very conscious of the political views of my family members. I'm the youngest of three children. At least to my knowledge, neither of my sisters have ever been particularly politically oriented. My father is one of those people who doesn't say who he's voted for, doesn't talk about politics really, so that was never any sort of conversation that I had. I think that my mother was and is on the slightly more progressive side, but a moderate. And again, didn't really talk politics much in my household growing up. I actually didn't come to politics until very, very late. I think the first time I really remember being activated by politics was the 2000 election, at which point I was 24 years old. I grew up a practicing Jew. My family now is more culturally Jewish than religiously so. And it's a big thing if one grows up Jewish, particularly in a place like Massachusetts, where at the time that I was growing up there, we were in a somewhat rural area. There weren't that many Jews around. You were very aware that you were in a minority. And just culturally, I think there's always been a commitment to social justice that comes with going to Sunday school, Hebrew school, learning about the Talmud, all things I did when I was much younger. So I would say that a commitment to social justice, and specifically to trying to work as hard as you can on behalf of vulnerable populations, if you're in a position to do so, that was ingrained in me from a very young age. I'll tell you the one thing I remember my parents telling me about politics, in fact, the only thing I can remember them ever really saying, and that is never cast a vote for any office on the basis of what you think that politician can do for you. Think about what they could do for the country, and specifically those who are most in need. That's the one thing I remember growing up, and that's something I still believe. I tend to be a person of many, many different passions, to be honest with you. I'll admit that I'm very into what they call nerd culture, so I've been passionate about graphic novels, passionate about video games. I'll be honest and say that when I was a kid, I thought I would become an architect, and so I was obsessed with Legos, and I still like Legos, though, not to play with, but to build models for display. So I'm passionate about being what they call an AFOL, an adult fan of Lego. I'm passionate about politics. I'm passionate about criminal justice reform, passionate about higher education reform. I've been an education activist for about 10 years, trying to help aspiring poets and writers in the U.S. Get more financial aid from graduate programs in creative writing. So the list kind of goes on and on. I'm just someone who has about 10 to 20 passions at a time. I'm from Massachusetts, so not far from where I am right now. I grew up about 45 minutes from here. And for much of my life, up until I guess the age of 30, I sort of shuttled between Massachusetts near the New Hampshire border and New Hampshire. So I went to college in New Hampshire, then I went to law school in Massachusetts, then I went to work at the public defender's office in New Hampshire. So I've sort of gone back and forth. And then when I turned 30, I moved to the Midwest for 8 years and lived in Iowa and Wisconsin, and now I'm back in New Hampshire. And sometimes it's hard to express this in a way that makes sense or doesn't seem a little strange. But when you are on Twitter for a big part of the day, meaning that you are participating in a completely disembodied space, you really do need to have something in your life where you're doing something with your hands physically, just because it's embodied. It doesn't have to be Lego. It could be a million other things. But I really would suggest to anyone who spends a lot of time in social media, have a hobby that is very tactile. This is Wall-E from the movie Wall-E.
That's amazing.
Let me turn around. He was facing the wrong way.
And he's got the plant.
Is that all right? Yeah. He's got a little plant. So, I like Disney movies. And so you can see why, having that in your office environment, it's fun.